Good afternoon, friends. To whichever part of the globe you belong to, I am Professor Dinesh Gusai, welcoming you for this presentation on entrepreneurship management. And as we always, I'm sure that you have gone through the earlier modules, you have found it interesting, written some important points and notes about it, researched your own work about it as well, because that's the way to go forward from a learning perspective. So what we will do is we'll do quickly, step number one, we will do a quick recap of what we've done so far. Step two, we will be looking into what is the outline for today, and we will detail it out in step three. Step one. So we have started with our module on understanding what is entrepreneurship management. We have defined who is an entrepreneur. We have defined what are the characteristics and attributes an entrepreneur need to have. We spoke about optimism, goal orientation, risk orientation, creativity and innovation were the prime attributes needed for becoming an entrepreneur. Then we moved on into a second module in understanding the market and the opportunities. In terms of market and opportunities, we spoke about looking into the internal dimension and also looking into the external dimensions as well. So when we spoke about the internal dimensions, we spoke about what kind of products and services the enterprise should be working on, what are the marketing intermediaries, what the supply chain looks like, so on and so forth. External, we spoke about factors that influence and present as opportunities or threat are the demographic environment, the environmental factors, the social factors, the political factors, the technological factors. That's what we spoke about when we spoke about analyzing the internal environment and also the external environment. In module 3, we moved forward and understood one of the prime attributes required by an entrepreneur. We spoke about risk management and also detailed it further in terms of role of women in entrepreneurship. So we spoke about how the percentage of women becoming an entrepreneur worldwide and in Indian conditions as well has gone up. That's what we looked into one of the modules. The fourth module, we moved forward and understood about innovation. So one of the primary elements of an entrepreneur, we spoke about the difference between creativity and innovation, and we also spoke about what all innovative measures or methods the entrepreneur could take it forward. And the methods could be, when we speak of innovation, we also spoke about innovation is not only restricted to products or services, but also in terms of marketing strategies, reach to customers, in terms of supply chain management, inventory norms. So these are all areas where innovation could be brought in. We further moved forward into the next module about venture capitalists. So we spoke about how capital or money could be raised by an entrepreneur, and there are various ways to go about it. We also found out in that module that generally startup entrepreneurs invariably get their capital either from their savings or family friends. And then we also spoke in this module about angel investors. We spoke about venture capitalists. We spoke about the role of debt and equity funds, be it from banking or equity. And also one of the tools is for an established kind of entrepreneur are the IPOs or the initial public offerings. That's what we spoke about in venture capitalists. And then we moved forward also further into understanding the dynamics about the market implications when it comes to entrepreneur. This is what we have spoken. In today's module, a brief outline, we will look into SSIs or small scale industries. Now, when we are looking SSIs or small scale industries under the entire roof of entrepreneurship, now entrepreneurs invariably start their journey, especially if they are the startup one, majority of them would start with an SSI or small scale industry. Now here we are speaking of first generation entrepreneurs. The second generation or the third generation entrepreneurs, that means their forefather or father had already established a business. For them, it doesn't really matter. It's about maintaining and managing the business and taking it forward, just like the Ambani brothers. For them, there was an established business. So for Anil and Mukesh Ambani, it's about building from the existing base. Those are second generation entrepreneurs. But when we primarily speak of first generation entrepreneur, they invariably start off with an SSI or small scale industry. So our today's entire discussion will revolve around small scale industries. And small scale industries is a common word. More, in other words, is also called as SME or small to medium enterprise, or it's also called as MSME or micro, small and medium enterprise. They are interchangeably used, but generally SSI or SMEs are what it's commonly called as. Now when we speak about why we are discussing SSI under entrepreneurship management, because invariably lot of entrepreneurs start their enterprise or an organization or a company as a small scale unit. Now it could be from various industries. It could be from textile to it could be textile, it could be manufacturing, it could be food products, it could be acrylic, rubber, whatever the case might be. So invariably all entrepreneurs start their journey as an SSI, and that's precisely the reason we are looking into small scale industry within entrepreneurship management. So whenever we are discussing points on SSI or SMEs or MSME, primarily we will look into the context, or we will always have a point of reference of an entrepreneur. That's important. So what we are going to address in this session, as point wise, we will define its characteristics. What would be the definition of an SSI? What are the primary characteristics or attributes? We will look into the needs and rationale. So we will look into why there is a need to develop SSI or build SSI. We'll also speak about objectives, scope, role of SSI in economic development. So how much of SSI contributes to the entire GDP and possibly also the manufacturing. So we look into a few statistical numbers and data as well, and then infer from those data as well. We look into advantages and steps to start an SSI. We'll also look into government policies. When it comes to government policies, we are setting the Indian context at this point of time. So what Indian government has taken steps towards development of SSI, different policies of SSI, and government support for SSI as well. So we'll start off with the first. So when we speak of small scale industries, if you want to define it, and by definition in terms of words being, it is a unit engaged in manufacturing, processing, servicing of goods, having investment in machinery at an original cost not exceeding rupees 60 lakhs. So even the value is important, not exceeding 60 lakhs. And why it is mentioned 60 lakhs? Because that's a cutoff limit when it comes to be called as an SSI. So even by definition, to be called as a small scale industry, the tangibles in terms of machinery and the cost comes into picture here as well. Now I'll give an example to take it further. Now, where does the role of SSI comes in when there are established businesses already? Now let's take an example of a food product, Parle Products. Now we know Parle Products is close to a $1.5 billion company. That's roughly around 10,000–12,000 crore rupees. Now, we know that as Parle, why I took an example of Parle for simple reason. Parle is seen as a benchmark when it comes to penetration and reach. So if you figure out to the remotest corner of any retail shop which has a food product, it will have a Parle G. So a lot of referencing is given when it comes to distribution networks of Parle. Now, it also means that if a company has a good distribution network, that also means that it has a great manufacturing process as well. Now, since Parle has built in the last 80-90 years or so, it is important to understand that with the growing population, it's very difficult for Parle standalone to have their own manufacturing units and then to provide goods to its customers. So what does Parle does? Parle empowers small units. Now in smaller units, so places like Bahadurgarh, places like Lucknow, Kanpur, Aurangabad, Khopoli, all these places where there are set up the state industrial development corporations or GIDC, MIDC, KPIDC, all those state government industrial development centers have the small manufacturing units. So what Parle does is it empowers those small industries to manufacture goods for Parle under their supervision. So the unit as such is owned by a private enterprise. So it is a privately run, but it is supervised. So one of a production manager of Parle would be stationed in that plant. So it works this way. So the unit that produces big brand like Parle products, it could be Parle G or any of the confectionery products also, they are classified as SSI. And let me tell you, Parle standalone has close to 200 association with SSI. 200 for a single company, Parle. And they are not owned by Parle, but they are into a tie-up. So 200 people or SSIs manufacturing goods for bigger organizations. So SSI work on both models, because for small scale industry, one of the biggest challenge, friends, is to market a product, because they can manufacture a product, but to market a product, it's a huge cost. To go out and reach to the marketplace is a huge cost, and all entrepreneurs know this. So initially, they might not be able to shelve off that money. So what they do? So small SI get in touch with bigger MNCs or bigger organization, so that they outsource or outcontract their products. So all manufacturing products, for that matter, all manufacturing companies including Sun, Cipla, Alchem, Lupin, all those companies, not all of their products are manufactured by them, but they are produced by outsourcing their products through an SSI. And majority, when it comes to pharma products, are stationed in Baddi in Himachal Pradesh, and also a few pockets in Gujarat as well, because they are tax-free zones. So all these zones becomes the hub and the center for SSIs, and that's how SSI prospers well. SSIs could also be defined with an effort from 1997. The government has raised the investment for the SSI to 3 crore from 60 lakhs. So initially it started off with 60 lakhs, but to be called as a SSI, it raised it another to 3 crore with passing of time. Regarding employees, less than 50 when using power, or less than 100 employees when power is not used. So whenever a machinery is used and the power is used as well, so the number of employees, 50 or 100 based on the use of power or not, and 3 crore should be the turnover of the organization as per the new benchmarks of 1997. as per classical definition of SSI. Now, this is how the progression of small scale industries has been throughout this period, and let's mention this period as well. So, friends, when it started with 1950, the capital that was required was 5 lakh in assets, which gradually from 50 to 97, if you see, the capital up to 3 crore on machinery. Now, definition is important. When the capital required, when they are mentioning is of 3 crore, is in the machinery use. Now, these definitions are important when it comes to SSI. Now, a simple question might generally arrive at that. You might ask a question that what difference does it make whether an enterprise belongs to an SSI or not? Now let me tell you, it does make a difference. If an enterprise is registered as an SSI or an SME or MSME, it is important they get tax evasion, they get benefits, they get grants, they get subsidies, they get tax relaxation norms as well. So these are the advantages when an enterprise is classically recognized as an SSI. So these were the capacities that it went along as the age progressed. Objective. What is the objective of developing an SSI? Number one is to generate large-scale employment opportunities for the unemployed speedily and relatively low investment. Now, one of the big-time advantage of a small-scale industry development is generally they are built in any state regulated industrial development zones, and they are generally far off as well, remote places. One of the things that is strongly caters to is unemployment, because people around that territory. Let's take an example. Pune, there is an industrial area called as Shirwal. So lot of manufacturing industries, right from automobiles, chemical plants. So we have an ACG, we have a Volkswagen. So there are automobiles, there are capsulation plants, there are lots of them. So if you see the growth of Shirwal, which is a taluka place, in and around Pune, it's just on the outskirts of Pune, comes under district Satara. The taluka in the last 15-20 years has grown significantly and substantially for the simple reason that it gave job opportunities, security, financial well-being. So first, it gives employment is taken care of. To encourage dispersal of enterprises to all over the country, covering rural areas, smaller towns and economically backward regions. So a lot of time these SSIs are located, based in remote areas. So those areas are taken care of when it comes to grooming of people as well. To bring backward regions to the mainstream of the national and international development. So a lot of people who were residing in rural places, the objective is to bring them to the mainstream, because what happens with financial well-being or development is also the educational development. So a lot of education comes in. So with education, people of the rural area get to learn things, know things, because every industry or organization is connected with the main town, because the head offices might be based in metro towns. So people come and down, so they get to see how things are, and that in a way helps to bring people to come to the mainstream in terms of national and international development. To promote balanced regional development in the whole country. Now, one of the biggest challenges for a country like India with a close to uh, touching touching more than 100, 120, 150 crore population, becomes that uh, the metro towns, the tier one cities get overloaded. Now, when you speak of countries, cities like India, cities of India, right from Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai, uh, so Calcutta. So all these metro towns get cluttered in, clogged in, because lots of economic financial development has been centered around these nodal points. So lot of influx comes into the cities from a lot of rural areas. So what SSI does, or development of SSI does, is if people are given employment in or around their zone itself, when it comes to rural population, there is no need for them to travel to main towns, and hence there is a balanced set of growth demographically as well. Otherwise, for a country as big as India, if development happens at only nodal points, the challenge becomes there is an unequal distribution of wealth demographically as well, but also in terms of there is a big socio-cultural divide as well. So, which is not healthy from a national perspective. So there's a regional there's a balanced regional development to ensure more equitable distribution of national wealth. So if there is a balance in growth, that naturally results into distribution of financial wealth equally as well. To improve socio-economic conditions and standard of living of people of the country. So if financial well-being is taken care of, then naturally it results in good education, good health awareness, good understanding of how to use money, good understanding of how to plan life. So these things set in. So the socio-cultural dimension and values changes with these things happening. To bring more revenue to the central and state government by way of taxes. So what happens is, in a country like India, if you see the pre-70s era, pre-1970s era, there were small, we call this the household incomes. So people had that right from, people always have this household income in doing small businesses. It could be in terms of poultry farming, it could be in terms of small fishery, it could be in terms of horticulture. So all these were local household businesses, but yet there was no taxation coming in to the central government, because it was a very locally unstructured kind of entrepreneur. So if a government gives them a structure, give them grants, loans, so that they can build a capital and a corpus, so that within their own zones they can build a small SSI. So it's a win-win for both. For an entrepreneur, they get soft loans, they get infrastructure, they get reach to market to a diversified background. For a government, if they are registered on the SSI, they get taxes, because that's the return. So these were the advantages or objectives laid about by developing SSI. Let's also look into the characteristics. So what are the certain features or attributes an SSI demonstrates? Capital investment, they say, is small, and most of them have small number of workers. Now we have mentioned that any startup organization, let me tell you, there are many startup organizations, they start their business with only one employee. So he is a director, he is a CEO, he is a peon, he is a distributor, he is a whole and soul, and slowly make it big from 3, 4, 5, 10, 15. So they're small organization, generally owned by a single or possibly by two people. Just like we all know, Infosys was started off with only a bunch of 5 people to start off, and they remained 5 for some time. Workers are not well recognized. So people who are working there as a startup grows to make it into a unit of 4, 5, they're not well recognized. Funded by owners saving or short-term goals. So normally the revenue which is there for an SSI comes from the saving of an entrepreneur. Few of them may grow as medium scale industries. Now let me tell you that naturally we expect that an SSI would grow up into a medium sized industry, right? That's what the natural expectation is. But if you look into the statistics and numbers, not many SSI graduate themselves to a mid-sized industry. Couple of reasons associated, because not everybody want to, because growth brings along with additional responsibility, quality of life becomes a challenge, so on and so forth. For some, handling success could be difficult. For some, it could be capital resource. So the point is, very few of them grow to become a mid-sized organization. Innovation and risk bearing are high in SSI. Now, we know in any small scale industry, for them to survive, they have to be having innovation to the core. They need to really develop either a product, a service, which is very, very unique, special, which adds value to people's life. Profit margins are less due to competition. And as I mentioned earlier, when you calculate the GDP of a country like India, lot of the small household income is not accounted for. And that also means that people at a very micro level facilitate and conduct lots of small businesses which are not accounted in GDP. That also means there are very small entrepreneurs at a micro level which are plenty. That means that competition is stiff. Let's take an example. Let's take tourism as an example. Now, when we think of tourism, we generally imagine that tourism constitutes travel, stay, and stay means hotel. Now, for a country like India, hotel are registered under a norm of the tourism development as a hotel industry, and even motels where there is a stay arrangement as well. But if you look into Indian tourism at a micro level, so if you go and visit places in and around Goa, for example, Malwan, Tarkarli, a place in Kerala, and lots of places around, there are concept of homestays. I'm sure you might have visited a few of them. Now, homestays are household businesses. They don't have any structure when it comes to doing business. So there is no sales tax on it. So because they just entertain guests for a couple of days, they receive money, and that's the business they do. But there is no a government intervention in between, because there is no registration as an SSI. So there are small, and this is just one of the examples, and there are small of these businesses that are conducted by many. Just for example, travel business. Before the boom of Ola and Uber, so many of metro town people used to give their vehicles on hire as a medium to generate wealth and do business. And they used to make business without any record about it. And these are all additional income which doesn't get reflected in the GDP. So that also means that for an SSI, there is a lot of competition, not only from other SSIs, but also from people who are competing at a very micro level. Advantage. Let's look into the advantages of an SSI. One, SSI don't require a high level of technology. So we mentioned that generally SSIs graduate and develop from a household kind of business. So they don't require a high-tech, hi-fi kind of technology. Sometimes technology even is not part of their business. For example, poultry farming. doesn't require much of a technology. And if an SSI is developed into a poultry, possibly the light arrangement, the infrastructure, that's about it. So there is no high-tech science involved. They do not require large capital. So since SSI itself mentioned the base capital value is less, and hence the capital required is less, the projects related to SSI can be completed in short period and hence can become productive in a short period. Since the project, the framework, the objective is at a shorter level, and hence the objectives could be met also in shorter time as well. Source of employment for local people, either full-time or part-time. So we know that since it's a micro kind of business, even employment, they get it very cheap because they are all rural people. And not necessarily they all need to be a full-time employee. So a lot of this SSI you'll also find part-time as well. So you'll find people who work in college. So daytime they work in college, and part-time they also work for a very small unit as well. So makeshift arrangement as well. SSI acts as training areas for local entrepreneurs. So from a villager's perspective, SSI gives an opportunity for them to get exposure to not only the way business is done, but also in terms of instruments used, connecting to people, products to be handled, maintaining accounts, usage of computers. So these all things bring a lot of awareness at a very micro level as well. Advantages. They help in the economic growth of the country. So we know that definitely SSI helps to bring in economic growth for simple reason. It brings in from the household kind of business to become an SSI. This makes possible a shift manufacturing activity from busy towns to rural areas. We spoke about it that the objective and advantage also to distribute population, wealth also in a more even way than to be concentrated at nodal centers of metro towns. They meet the increased demand of consumer goods. So since the reach is different, reach affects at the lowest point, it also is used to meet the customer needs. SSI helps in creating jobs for unemployment. So it mentioned that it is very important that it creates opportunities for job. And for any villager, any rural place, if they're able to get a job, even if the salary would be half, possibly 1/3 of what they get in a metro town, they would be pretty happy to receive that salary locally. Simple reason, if a person has to move out to a metro town, that also means that's additional revenue to be spent because for a metro town expenses goes up. For rural area, they can go from visit from a house itself, they can work from their house itself, and that itself means saving cost. Role of SSI in economic development. We also look into what is the role and or how SSI helps in the development of economy. And that also infers the point that every entrepreneur, even a startup entrepreneur, then could be said as a key person in the development of economic development. So the role of small enterprise in economic development of a country can be discussed with the reference to following parameters, and the parameters could be seen as number of entrepreneurs, the production manufacturing capacities, and the employment, the variables that will be used. Now, increase in the small enterprise, increase in the value of production in rupee terms, increase the number of people employed, increase in the export earnings in rupee terms. So if you look into these four variables, and the four variables we'll look into, the small enterprise, if you see, have registered a phenomenal growth in their numbers, production, employment, and exports over the last 4 decades. So all these four has increased. And if you want to substantiate with numbers, in 1950, that's good 70-80 years back, there were around 16K registered small scale industries, which increased to 31 lakhs in 1999. As of now, by 2016 reports, they stand at 48 lakhs. 48 lakh registered small scale industries. During 1973-74, let's take some other variable. The total value of production reported by SSI was 7,200 crore, and this has grown phenomenally from 1970s to about 75 times. That's 5,38,000 crore during 1999. So a growth that happened 75 times in terms of the absolute numbers increase as well. So the point is, this has been phenomenally increasing. As regards employment, let's look at employment as a variable itself. Let's look at just the number of people getting employed. If you see 40 lakh people were employed in SSI during 73-74, there is a fourfold increase in employment during 98-99. That is 175 lakh people were employed during 98-99. So if you see on all four variables, right from number of units registered, number of people employed, number of the manufactured goods getting increased, and the export, the fourth variable, all the four parameters have increased close right from 4 times to close to 75 times increase in all these four variables. Is a clear indicator, and these all four variables account to the GDP growth as well. Now there is a phenomenal increase in export revenue as well. So if you look into some statistical data as well, during the 4 decades from 73-74, SSI exported rupees 393 crores worth of goods and services, and this grew nearly 150 times. Now understand, friend, 150 times is some size during the period. That's accounted to close to 57,000 crores 98-99. So 150 times in 3 decades is a phenomenal export orientation when it comes to contribution from an SSI. As we can see, the SSI sector has been contributing tremendously in overall economic development of the country by increasing vast employment opportunities, increased value of production, increased value of exports, and foreign exchange. So all four variables, which are also the prime indicators for GDP, has been the reason how SSIs have contributed to the growth of the nation. Now we will look into, when we are speaking of SSI, we will look into a step-by-step method. Now this is what a very important point is, friends. Like, what are the step-by-step methods that an entrepreneur has to do when he has to start an enterprise? So if an enterprise is there, if he intends and has a vision to start an organization, what measures or what methods or what processes is going to adopt one by one? So flow chart for setting up a small enterprise. Step number 1, and we will detail out each. So the entire flow chart which is shown on the slide 13 would be a precursor. So in all following slides till the end of session, we will be detailing each of this. So this is an important slide to have an overview, to have a good bird's eye view. Step number 1. So what are we discussing? We're discussing flow chart for setting up of a small enterprise. So for an entrepreneur, what are the steps involved to start an enterprise? So flowchart, when we say step number 1, selection of a project. So number 1, product or service selection. So what kind of, is it a product or is it a service? Location, product feasibility study, and that's an important study as well. So you might have a vision to offer a product to the marketplace, which might be unique, different, creative. But the point is the product feasible? Is it workable? Does it comes under the cost purview as well? So feasibility report, preparing project profile and business plan preparation is part of the entire selection of a project, and we will discuss in detail each one of this. Once this is decided, second is deciding on the constitution. Constitution is a framework or the infrastructure, and the infrastructural framework includes 1, obtain SSI registration. So once a project is cleared, when a business proposal is made, the second step naturally follows is the obtain an SSI registration. Then obtain clearance from specific departments as applicable. So based on the industry type or service type, the project need to be cleared by that particular. For example, if it's a hotel industry, it has to be cleared by hotel and tourism industry. If it's into textile, it has to clear from the textile industry, from the labor industry as well. So all these are the specific industry related bodies where the project needs the NOC or clearance from or license of. Let's take an example. If somebody intends to start as an enterprise into pesticides, so pesticide is something that everyone needs it at some point of time. So if a person ventures out to start a small organization with 5 people for pesticide industry, so he needs to first take an approval from the Food and Drug Administration as clearance, FDA. He needs to take control from the Pest Control Body of India. So these are certain. So with every industry, there are specific set of bodies that the entrepreneur needs a clearance from. Then arrange for the land or shed. So we need to have an infrastructure about it. Arrangement of plant machinery. Arrangement of infrastructure in terms of preparation project report plans. So what is the project report plan? Apply and obtain finances. Proceed to implementation of the project. So there is a small flow chart coming out of it. So we'll quickly take a recap once again. 1, selection of a project, deciding the constitution in terms of obtaining an SSI registration, obtaining clearance, then arranging for land, capital, infrastructure, creating a project business plan, getting finances, execution of the project. There is a flow chart, and we will discuss each of this. So step 2 we discuss, so project selection. So we will discuss in project selection, entrepreneur is the most important person for the success of a project. So in order to set up a small enterprise, the entrepreneur has to decide a suitable project. So we spoke in the first module. The entrepreneur need to be very clear. Okay, what kind of businesses I would be in? Why I should be in this business? Do I have some edge or niche in this particular industry with this particular product or services? You need to be clear. The entrepreneur also has to be decide on a suitable location of the project. So based on these selections, a project feasibility study has to be conducted, and then brief project profile has to be prepared for the proposal project. So once a land is created, for example, if somebody wants to set up a small unit of a manufacturing plant, so first a land has to be obtained. 2, also need to check whether the land is approved or the building is approved to do a business. For example, you can't do a business in a residential complex. So according to society bylaws, you are not allowed and permitted to do business because residential area has their own particular set of rules and regulations which people can't adhere to. People have to adhere to. So whether the building is approved, whether the land is approved. So if it's an agricultural land, converting into a non-agricultural land as well is important. So project selection, the preliminary activities involved are: number one, product or service selection, location, feasibility study, preparation of the project profile, and business plan preparation. Now each of this is important. Now business plan preparation is also important for getting finances. We spoke in the first module on preparing a pro forma. Now pro forma is the intention of starting a project, and it has to be backed up by all of these in terms of the business proposal, in terms of the feasibility study, and the market projections as well. So let's look into one by one. The product and service selection. So this is the first and the most important step. So they say, experienced people say that before starting an enterprise, the entrepreneur need to spend some time on this. So a lot of time people do businesses just because that business is doing well. So if you see some other people doing the same business, they're doing well, they feel it's good time that I can also start. Wisdom says that this should not be the guiding force standalone. One of the forces, yes, but should not be the guiding force because those are external environmental factors. It is always good strategy when an entrepreneur is deciding on what kind of product and services is going to project, then he has to be clear about it. Has to be an inside out process. So in terms of what are my skills, my knowledge, my expertise about it, and then based on that, and also what lies outside need to be checked. So because the further prospects, actions and efforts in setting up of a small enterprise and commencing its commercial activities successfully depends on the decision. So once this is decided, the later on it is very difficult to adapt. So it is important that if a person is spending time on this aspect, it is good, because once you have decided and then moved on with other feasibility study, capital, finances, you have already taken a track. Then altering it becomes very difficult. Therefore, the entrepreneur has to be very careful in the choice selection of the project. What kind of project he is going to stay with. The main factors, if you see, to be considered in deciding a suitable project are as follows: background and experience of entrepreneurs. So it is important that before a person venture out to take up a project, it's good to check what kind of background and experience people have. So a lot of time entrepreneurs tend to start those businesses that they already had their experience on. So a lot of time people, say for example, who has worked in a pharma company as in a function of sales or marketing. So they work 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. These people themselves start their own pharma company. Or people who are into distribution network, they start as a distribution, maybe to speak of pharma company itself, and they start a company. Let's take the biggest organization in India, Sun Pharma. Sun Pharma started off their journey, when you speak of Dilip Sanghvi, the CEO, MD of Sun Pharmaceutical, the number one pharma company in India, he started off his journey as an entrepreneur, as a distributor of the pharma industry. And from there they evolved. So people who generally are into the same business tend to make into the same thing. Availability of right technology and know-how for the project. So this is about the knowledge and skill. So what kind of knowledge and expertise do I have? Marketability of the product and service. Can I go on and market this product and service? Do I have the required number of customers available for my product and service? Investment capacity, that is financial resources. Do I have the required capital? Can I fund my own? Can I raise capital for machinery, for marketing? Availability of plant and machinery, indigenous or export. So if I have need to develop, or if I want a state of art machinery, is it available in India, or it has to be imported? And if it is imported, what's the cost? How much time it will take? What are the other hidden costs, and what are the other set of challenges in terms of post-sale service of the machinery if it is imported? These questions. Availability of raw material for the production if it is into products. Availability of proper infrastructure facilities. For example, land, shed, power, water, communication, transport. They are the primary infrastructure required for an entrepreneur from the industrial side to the marketplace. Location selection. So if the enterprise is even if it is in a manufacturing banner or also in a service kind of industry, location becomes important. So for example, a KFC or a McDonald's, there is no point of starting a KFC or McDonald's in an absolute rural area, isn't it? So they say, don't try to sell ice creams in the Himalayas, isn't it? So you need to sell those type of products and services where it is needed. So after deciding on the project, once the project is decided, the next important decision for an entrepreneur is to make about the location of the project. So what all factors contribute when it comes to deciding the location? Number one, nearness and proximity to the market. So how much near or far it is to the marketplace where the customer resides, because that will also decide the inventory management, cost of commutation cost, and also the transfer as well. Availability of raw materials. Where are the raw material available to where it is manufactured? Availability of transportation and communication facilities. So what kind of communication tools in terms of road, air, rail is available if any raw material has to be imported or exported? Availability of government incentives and concessions. We mentioned a couple of minutes earlier that there are zones or SEZs, special export zones. SIPS is a classic example in Mumbai where it's called as Santa Cruz export processing zones. So what government incentives or tax rebates are available? So are there in zones? And that's the reason primarily lot of pharma industries, small scale or big scale, are present in Baddi in Himachal Pradesh. Simple reason, the Himachal government has taken initiative from a state development perspective and also backed up by a central norm that there is a lot of tax rebate given or tax concession given to set up industries there. So what are the areas? The location is important from that perspective. Government industrial policy. So what kind of industrial policy in terms of water, usage of water, power, how do you dispose your waste, industrial waste? Availability of suitable infrastructure facilities. So if any special technology, raw materials is needed, how that is accessible becomes important. Availability of labor. So if I would require labor for my production, it would be available on a consistent basis. And also the quality of labor. It's not just the numbers or the head count, but also do I get that kind of labor having those kind of skills? Convenience for the entrepreneur. Also, last not the least, that for an entrepreneur would be convenient getting up this as well becomes important. Then the project feasibility study. So when we speak of project feasibility study, it's the important fact of project feasibility study are as follows. Number one, market analysis. Now, so first of all, let's understand what does a feasibility study mean. Now, feasibility as the word itself says, feasible by dictionary definition means, is it workable? Means you might have selected a project, but is the business going to work? That means, is it workable in terms of cost? So many elements to it. So feasibility report we call it. So feasibility study has to be conducted, and that includes market analysis, technical analysis, finance analysis, economic analysis, and the social analysis. All those variables, the macro elements are covered. And those elements one by one include, when it comes to project profile, the project profile generally contains information under the following heads, and those are introduction, promoter's background, education experience, product services, its description, market and marketing, infrastructural needs, plant and machinery, the description, process details. So if it's a manufacturing unit, what is the process to be used? How many days it will require from a raw material to an end product? Power, water and other basic utilities to be used, manpower needed, cost of the project and means of finances, cost of production and profitability. So this is generally the project profile. Now this we also call as a pro forma as well. Very important from an entrepreneur's perspective. The business plan preparation. Now, business plan preparation is the plan required by an entrepreneur to get capital. So, if an entrepreneur needs the capital in terms of a loan, equity, or even to raise funds to an angel investing or a venture capitalist, he needs to have a business plan. So, this is the documentation an entrepreneur plans his business to have an organized to effective response to situation which may arise in future. The business plan is used to make crucial startup decisions, to reassure lenders, investors, and to measure operational progress. Now, in test planning assumptions to adjust forecast and to the standards of good operation management. So, a business plan is generally made from 1 year to 10 years. So, people plan it they give projections of forecasting. So after 5 years, this is what we are expected to reach. After a decade, this is what the company's turnover would be. Turnover in terms of numbers, in terms of people recruited, in terms of services to be offered, and in terms of the reach that the organization is going to have. Deciding on the constitution. So once a decision is made, once a feasibility study is done, when a business plan is done and a business profile is made, then is the decision on the constitution, so or the infrastructure. So to start any enterprise, the promoter has to decide on the constitution of the unit and the three major alternatives. So infrastructure wise, there are three major alternatives, and that means the type of the SSI. One, it could be proprietary business. Two, it could be partnership, or it could be company. And we look into each of these definitions when it is called a proprietary business, when it is called as a partnership or partnership deed, or when it is called a company. This is a very important bifurcation that a person who is learning entrepreneurship management need to know. Because people who eventually at some point of time want to become an entrepreneur, this is also very important to know. So when we speak of proprietary business, what does it mean? Proprietary business means a single individual is the owner of such an enterprise. He is the single owner. Partnership, as the name itself signifies, is an association of two or more people subject to the maximum of 20. So, a group of 20 is also partnership. They are governed by the Indian Partnership Act of 1932 and rules are framed under the state government. It is advisable to have a partnership deed agreement on stamp paper of appropriate value. So based on the company's value and on a stamp paper, a partnership deed is made about the part percentage of proprietary of ownership in terms of part profit, in terms of how distribution of work is shared as well. Company, so one is proprietary business, second is partnership, and third company. So when you speak of company, this may be private or public. Now a private limited company is formed, so that's the reason if you see some companies have India Bulls private limited company. So what is a private limited company? So private limited company is formed with a minimum of 2% or a maximum of 50. A public limited company can be formed with a minimum of 7 and maximum of so many, not really governed by the company. Companies are governed by a Company Act of 1956. So when we say a private company, they are generally 2 or 50. Public, they are 7 and maximum could be any. And why any? For the simple reason a public company is a listed company and a lot of these listed companies have float IPOs or initial public offerings. And when initial public offerings are made, thousands and sometimes many people invest money, and hence this people and they're also part ownership. So there are so many people who are co-owners when it comes to public companies. For registering the company, one has to approach registrar of the company of the state. So for state, the company needs to be registered. Without registration of the company, it would not be called either a proprietary company or a partnership company or a company as such. So it has to be registered. That's important before doing business. Obtaining the SSI registration. Now we'll also look into what kind of registration things that need to be required for SSI. So entrepreneurs need to start a SSI. They have to obtain a PRC. PRC is the provisional registration certificate. So any entrepreneur who want to start an SSI, this PRC is important, or a provisional registration certification is important. Once the unit goes into production, so this is all at a planning stage. So once the unit goes into production, then PRC has to be converted into a permanent registration. So this P was provisional, the earlier one, then it has to be converted into the permanent registration certificate. So if you see in PRC, this is the initial registration required for starting up a small enterprise, and the entrepreneur has to apply to obtain PRC for a selection of the project and deciding on the location of the unit. Now this application is necessary for infrastructural facilities such as land, shed, power and finance of the financial institution. So PRC or provisional registration certificate is dead important for an SSI to get registered. This is the registration certificate as the first step. And once the company goes into production or goes into execution of its services, then a permanent license or PMT, the permanent certification is required. So when we speak of permanent registration certificate or PMT, a micro or a small enterprise can get a permanent registration certificate when it actually commences its activity. PRC would be converted to PMT when the unit commences. Now PMT registration will help in, now what does this registration give us? Now a lot of time the question is, okay, what if you don't register and just do business? So SSI or small scale industries, if an entrepreneur is part of that community or a body, he has certain advantages about it, and those are: number one, to apply to scare raw materials for imports raw materials. So he get an advantage in terms of if you need to import certain scarce raw material. Two, to get working capital loan from banks and financial institutions. It is important, friends, understand loan or a capital is not only required when you're proposing a plan, because that's when you require a heavy capital to buy machinery, land, so and so forth. But also once this is invested, you also need working capital. That means to run the show, for the daily activities, you need capital. So if you're registered as a PMT, that gives you access to these funds for claiming incentives, concessions, including sales tax exemption wherever applicable, to apply for registration under the government stores purchase programs, export promotion programs, and to get any kind of references. So these are the advantages, perks, benefits, or tax evasion rules that PMT provides, or permanent registration provides to an entrepreneur. Specific clearance. Now, apart from getting this certification, be it the PRC or the PMT, there are specific industry-related clearance also required. And those industry-related clearance would be, number one, some of them are given below. One, agricultural land conversion into a non-agricultural land. So a lot of time, especially for an SSI, say for example a poultry business, a family is starting into a poultry business. Now they already had a household business, but they wanted to make it slightly bigger. Now they always had an agricultural land. Now understand that as per the rule of the land, an agricultural land cannot be used for a business producing activity. If it has to be used, then the land itself has to be converted from an agricultural land to a non-agricultural land. And that's an important step, and there's a specific clearance required. Building plan approved by local authorities. So all the local authorities, right from if it is a village panchayat, it is a taluka, a corporation, a Zilla Parishad, or a district court and magistrate, all requisite clearance need to be given by local authorities. Factories Act and Labor Departments, all clearance from Factories Department. Trade licensing and local authorities. So based on the industry type, they need to have clearance from local authorities and food bodies as well, if it is coming from food industry. Pollution board control clearance. So if the company is into production of any goods, then if pollutants are disposed or dumped off, then clearance in terms of Pollution Control Board of India has to be done, because what would be their waste management? You can't just dump your chemical waste or any waste product of your manufacturing goods into the main area. You need to have norms and regulation process about how it has to be followed up as well. Land and shed selection. Now, for any industrial project, suitable industrial site or a ready industrial shed is required. So if it is a manufacturing unit, definitely land is required and a shaded area is required to manufacture the good. The promoters of the unit could consider taking an industrial site and constructing a shed as per the requirement. Alternatively, could also consider taking a ready industrial shed on ownership also. So when we say shed, apart from the land, it's also a small place which is covered. Now initially, for a startup kind of entrepreneur, he might take it on rent or lease it, or he might want to own it as well. So based on that, he need to have a land or a shed selection. Plant and machinery, very important, because this involves big capital. Now, for a new time, a startup company, this is a big investment, friends. If you see, this requirement of a particular project could be purchased from recognized manufacturers or dealers. This could also be taken on higher basis, operated by national small scale. So if you are registered under SSI, so certain machinery could also be hired through National Small Industries Corporation Limited. So these are an added help that the government want to give to entrepreneurs. This is a Government of India promoted Corporation of India. So it could be for plants and machinery as well. Infrastructure facility. So what kind of infrastructure facility? In terms of a micro or a small enterprise, the main infrastructure facilities are land or shed that we have spoken about, but also other things like power connection, water, telephone, internet facilities. So very important in this communication revolution. District level single window agency assist entrepreneur in getting above facility. So one of the biggest obstacle for an entrepreneur is separate for land, separate for power, separate for, so we have separate local bodies. So there is a single window given where all these clearances could be taken under one roof. Hence the entrepreneur can forward an application on a plain paper to the joint director, district industry center for the district, giving its required of various infrastructure facilities for speedy approval and sanctions. Because for an entrepreneur, time is important. Any time he loses for all these clearances, the true time that he can give for marketing, for production, that's a gap that arises. So these could be minimized as well. So there is a single window agency for communication, for power, for electricity, for land, for internet, for communication as well, telephone. Project report. Now, project report is very much a very important part for an entrepreneur, not only for financial clearances, but also to present his case as well. So for any new project or enterprise to be set up, proper planning is necessary, very important. So project report is actually a planning report. So it includes things like what is the thing that you have, what is the proposal, what is the forecasting that you are doing. So a detailed project report provides us a plan for a project, and a project is useful for entrepreneur for planning and implementation of the project. This is essential for obtaining finances and other clearances as well for the project. For example, let's take a project proposal. For example, when you construct a building, what happens before constructing any building? A blueprint, a layout, isn't it? And that's a very important part when it comes to planning. Similarly, for an SSI, an entrepreneur needs to have a business report, and that's the blueprint. In fact, the project report gives a detailed insight of the techno-economic viability of the project, and this is generally prepared to cover the following. And this techno-feasibility is for looking into areas where it includes details of project, the background of an entrepreneur, the products and services to be described, market potential of the products or services, plant capacity, production plan, and manufacturing processes, infrastructure needed for the project, raw materials and consumable needed for the project. So all this is part of the project report, and it gives a detailed insight of these various things. Plants and machinery, manpower requirement, total project cost. So very important, because project reports the basis on which he would be getting finances as well. So it definitely includes the total project cost. Means of finances. What are the financial means that he is looking forward to? How much would be self? How much is loan? How much are investors involved as well? Income, cost, and profitability projections as well. The financial analysis, schedule of implementation, conclusions, and recommendations. So all this, if you see, are detailed approaches by which a project report is made. Finances. Now, one of the biggest obstacle for an entrepreneur is to arrange funds. Now, initially, fundraising, there were a lot of government initiatives as well. And as we have seen with the growth of entrepreneurs, which has been phenomenally over the last couple of decades, and because with the emergence of so many entrepreneurs, there's also the equal threat that there are defaulters as well. If business doesn't do well, then banks have already given loan to invest to entrepreneurs. They are not able to recover it back. And if you are not able to recover it back, that's a bad loan. And that really tarnishes the image of the bank itself or the lender itself. So lenders, investors, banks these days are very skeptical. They bring in lot of benchmarks. They want to have lots of finance. They want to have a lot of background check on the financial health. So when we speak of finances of such project are the two main categories: term loan, working capital loan. So there are two primarily loans that are given. One is a term loan, the other is a working capital loan, and we will look into how these are different. If you look at a term loan, for starting a small enterprise, term loan finances for the fixed assets like land, building, plant and machinery, etc. can be availed, and this loan can be availed from a state financial corporation. So all state government have their state financial corporations, or from a commercial banks as well. So they are term loans. Financial institutions sanction up to 75% of the total investment on fixed assets, and the balance 25% has to be managed by the promoters. So when we speak of investment for land, capital, machinery, 75% of this loan for this called as term loan could be funded. The rest 25, the promoter or an entrepreneur needs to manage on his own. The working capital loan. Now, this is also important for necessary because you can manage funds to buy capital and machinery, but working capital is important because day-to-day finances are required. So it's always preferable to approach commercial banks for working capital loan. So here the government doesn't take care of, here the private banks takes care of. All commercial banks finance up to 75% of the working capital loan, and the remaining to be pulled in by the promoters. Now it's important to note the bank will release working capital loan after the promoters have contributed that 25%. So the commercial banks will release the working capital loan of 75% provided the promoters themselves have shelled out the 25% as well, just as a second line of defense in terms of assurity. Implementation of the project. Now once the decision is made, clearance is sought of land, building, shed, finances, clearance is sought, implementation. From an entrepreneur, this is what he was always waiting for, to start off, to take off. So entrepreneur will have to take necessary steps to physically implement the project after obtaining the various clearances. Following are the major activities that the entrepreneur have to undertake for implementing the project, and those are: number one, construct shed, order for machinery, recruit personnel, very important step, arrangement of raw materials, marketing and obtaining financial clearance. And if you go one by one, if you see we'll also look into what are the government doing when it comes to development of SSI. So what initiatives the government is taking for SSI. So if you see, according to the IPR or Industrial Policy Resolution of 1948, SSI faced lots of challenges. There are shortage of raw materials, capital, non-availability of skilled laborers. The aim of an IPR or Industrial Policy Resolution was to provide protection to SSI. So let me tell you, since SSI, friends, are very small units, even if they lack resource constraint, even if they don't get water or power adequately, important to understand, friends, any of these SSI could wind up their operation because they don't have a very financial well-being when it comes to the financial health of the organization. So any one small lacune or gap could bring the shutter down, and hence government came forward and took steps towards moving it forward. So in 1956, IPR continued policy support to small sectors just to keep them alive, just to support and augment them wherever they required help. This policy development project like rural industrial projects, etc. This policy is aimed at the protection and development. So government came forward with the objective that they want to support it as well. So in 1977, the policy gave effective promotion to SSI, widely spread in rural and both urban areas, and they were given classically to certain highly unorganized SSIs but a major contributors, and those were cottage and household industries who provide a great amount of self-employment. To tiny industries can start industrial plant in their town with a population less than 50,000 and with upon 1 lakh investment. So these were certain initiatives according to the IPR of 1977. They took initiatives for cottage industries. Immediately after independence, the government of India initiated various steps for promotion and development of small scale and cottage industries. Now, Government of India has attached great importance to the development of SSI in all the 5-year plans that they made. Now, important to understand that predominantly Indian industries, when we speak about pre-independence, was always about cottage industry. India as a continent was always famous for its textile industry. Now, right from Roman days, where many of the court women always used to mention that they want to have the linen, cloth, cotton from India because they were of supreme quality. They were made in household hand woven stuff, which was of supreme quality. So great protection when it came to 5-year plans of government was given first primarily to cottage industry. So details, if you look into, few details we'll try to touch upon. The plan expenditure for small scale industry has been continuously increasing. Right from the first year plan, which was of around 50 crores, constituted 47% of the total plan expenditure, which was spent in small scale sector alone. By the end of the 5-year plan, there were 6 stationary boards created to help the small scale industry. So for protecting, developing this cottage industry, few boards were set up like All India Handloom Board, All India Handicrafts Board, All India Khadi and Village Industries Board, Small Scale Industries Board, Coir Board, Central Silk Board. So all of this were installed, made so that the cottage industry could be protected and developed further. Second 5-year plan that was in 56-61 focused on industries in the regions of the country. According to it, 60 industrial estates were established in different regions that provided various infrastructural facilities like power, water, transport, and the total expenditure was 187 crore, which went up significantly. And if you go into a third year plan of 61-66, stress was an expansion of coverage. Now, the stress was also to how the SSI could be, scattered and penetrated further. The total expenditure on small scale industry was 250 crore, went up sizably. The fourth, in 73, the small scale industry significantly expanded. By the end of 73, as many as 346 industrial estates or special zones were created so that they were the nourishing and grooming grounds for the small scale industries. Fifth 5-year plan, 74-78, outlay was rupees of 611 crores for SSIs, and the annual expenditure went up to 592. Sixth 5-year plan, 80-85, massive development programs were initiated by the development of most promising small scale industries, and the outlay was of 1,780 crores. So at every step, if you see, the amount that was spent for SSI went up very substantially high as well. The 7 5-year plan, 85-90, if you see, gave a lot of importance to technological upgradation to increase competitiveness of SSI. So come the era of 80s, 90s, we find that a lot was happening on a technological front in terms of communication, internet. So government took initiatives on those front. The actual expenditure on the 7 plan was 2,753 crore, which is double than the previous plan. Due to these various developmental programs, the small scale industry sector witnessed significant development on all fronts. Employment increased as well, substantially from 96 lakh people to 115 lakh people in the 7th period plan. 8th, 92, 97 gave a lot of stress on employment generation as the motive force for economic growth. As a result, the small scale industries increased from 13 lakh to 18 lakh. The value of annual production increased from rupees 91,000 odd crores. Total expenditures on small scale industries was 6,334 crore, which was 4 times the previous 5-year plan. So the point which we want to say from a statistical data point is, now these are numbers. Friends, it's important to understand it's not about the numbers, but the point we are driving home is consistently post-independence with each 5-year plan, government has seen and reinforced that fact they wanted to develop SSI because they see that's the future. That's also the way so that there would be a equal development not only in urban population but also in rural population as well. And one of the significant feature also is, if you see 211 report, contribution of SSI to a national GDP is 37%. I repeat, contribution of a small scale industry to the national GDP is 37%, which is more than 1/3 of the total GDP. So that also means that if the total GDP has to move up, then these initiatives were very much required. The new industrial policy. So many things changed post 1991, called as the liberalization period, and from an Indian context, also from an SSI context, and also from an entrepreneur perspective, this was a major step in many ways. So there were advantages, disadvantages, challenges, opportunities in many ways. So the new industrial policy of 1991 came up with three things: liberalization, privatization, and globalization. And all three fronts has their own set of challenges and opportunities both. And we'll look into one by one. So let's look at an overview of liberalization. Now understand, when we are studying entrepreneurship management, we definitely want to have a backdrop of the event that unfolded from 1991, because that's the step when the government took a chance to open up the economy by called the post-liberalization in terms of economic reforms. So Indian economy has experienced a major policy change in early 1990s, and the new economic reform, popularly known as the liberalization, privatization, and globalization, or the LPG model, aimed at making the Indian economy as fastest growing economy and globally competitive. And the series of reforms undertaken with respect to industrial sector, trade, and as well as financial sector aimed in the economy more efficient. So objective, if you want to put in a nutshell when it comes to post-liberalization, is to open up the economy. So pre-90s or before 1991, there were a lot of license, and hence it was called License Raj era. So there were a lot of licenses given, which were primarily for indigenous or local people or national people. With liberalization, it opened up the economy for all foreign investors, foreign companies to come in and invest money or start their businesses in India. So the term liberalization stands for the act of making less strict. So opposite of liberalization is strict. So liberal means you're free in your thinking. From an economic perspective, it means free in the way you are doing business. That means liberalization in the economy stands as a process of making policies less constraining of economic activity and also reduction of tariff. That means that the government will not have many interventions or obstacles when it comes to doing private business. So people who are doing businesses privately will not have major interferences. They will in fact allow a lot of foreign investors to come in, and that actually happened in the 1991. That was primarily the reason why the economy went up of India. Advantages. Now we look into the advantages. So any step, we all know, has their own set of challenges and opportunities. The advantages that post-liberalization brought in was industrial licensing, increase in foreign investment, increase the foreign exchange reserve, increase in consumption, and control over prices. So these are the major advantages that brought in with the post-liberalization. Disadvantages, there are certain disadvantages associated with liberalization, and those were increase in unemployment. Since if a foreign company, imagine a foreign company want to start a business in India. For running the business effectively and efficiently, they might not hire local labor at all levels. At a primary level, they might, but not at all levels, because they want to reduce cost as well. Hence, unemployment went up, loss to domestic units. So from an entrepreneur's perspective, from an SSI perspective, those SSI which were not competent enough to sustain in this liberalized era gone down or went out. Increased dependence on foreign nations. So since the economy is opened up, we get into a dependence kind of mode where you are dependent on the foreign countries. Unbalanced development. So sometimes the development didn't happen uniformly. It was at sometimes haphazard and not in a uniform way. Definition of the term privatization. So, understanding the LPG model. So, if you have known liberalization, let's look into privatization. The other P. The term privatization refers to transfer of ownership of property or business from a government to a privately owned entity. So, government, any organization which is run by government move to a private entity is privatization. Privatization means replacing government policies with the competitive pressures of the marketplace to ensure efficiency, quality and innovation and delivery of goods and services. For example, earlier, power, for example, was only governed and regulated by government, centralized and national and state-wise also. With privatization, you have now a lot of power companies as well, not only in generation but also in transmission as well, right from Reliance, Adani, Tatas. They are also into power generation and transmission both, which was not the case in the pre-liberalized era, which happened through privatization. Advantages of privatization being, privatization helps to reduce the burden of the government. It will help in making public sector more competitive. Because of privatization and they need to compete with foreign players or private players, the efficiency of the public companies also went up, like ONGC, Hindalco, Balco. They are the public owned companies. It will help to improve the quality of decision making because the decisions are free from any political interferences. Since with the liberalized era, the control of politicians on doing the business in terms of license are reduced, it has more value add through competition. The industrial growth prompted growth in general. Increase in foreign investments, the FDIs went up as well. Increase in efficiency as well. So, with increase in competition, the effectiveness and efficiency both went up as well. Certain disadvantages were increase in inequality, opposition by employees, so all labor unions opposed it, problems of financing, ignores the weaker section, ignores the national importance. So sometimes these were challenge areas where distribution of wealth was not the priority, making a growing economy, having a higher GDP was important. So capitalism always was looking at higher economic growth. Might not be always an equal growth. So there were a clear disembarkment between the haves and have-nots. So there's a disequilibrium as well. So examples of privatization when we speak of India, the Lagan Jute Machinery Company, the Videsh Sanchar Nigam Limited Company, Hindustan Zinc Limited, Hotel Corporation of India, HCL, or the Balco, Bharat Aluminium Company were examples of privatization that happened in India post-liberalization. So when you look at the privatization itself, these are statistical representation that says it so. Where minority stakes sales moved from 57 to 71 with privatization, improvement in income growth, improvement in net profit growth, and increase in market capitalization. All this went up with the LPG liberalization phase. The third, the liberalization, P, privatization, the G, globalization. So globalization implies integration of the economy of the country with the rest of the world and opening up of the economy for foreign direct investment, for liberalization of the rules and regulations by creating a favorable environment for the socio-cultural facilities. So what happens with globalization is you're opening up the economy as well. That means that the the economy is also open to private players as well. And that's the reason with post-liberalization, you see banking, there are so many private players available, not only local players, but national players as well. So you look at banks like HSBC, Dash Bank, American Bank. These are also banks that made way in India. So banking opened up big time. There were retail investors, there were retailing companies, there were malls as well, like Walmart came in India, which was not there in the pre-liberalized era. So all these companies make headway within the Indian economy. Features of globalization are opening and planning to expand business throughout the world, erasing the difference between domestic market and the foreign market. So sometimes it so happens that if a government decides to protect the market, it set up boundaries as well. So it protects certain markets. That's an advantage sometimes to be given to some industries. But if it is continuously protecting a certain market by giving incentives, by tax evasions, what happens eventually at a certain point of time, it might lose the competitive edge vis-a-vis what's available at the marketplace. Buying and selling goods and services from or to any other country in the world was becoming more easier due to globalization. So what happened earlier was, if you wanted to purchase a Beetle, a BMW or a Mercedes in automobiles, you need to import that vehicle. Post-liberalization, showrooms already exist of all these automobiles, right from Volkswagen to Mercedes to Audi to Benz. So all these already exist in the marketplace. So there's no import duties as such the end customer need to pay, which he used to pay earlier. Pros and cons. So there exists definitely pros and cons when it comes to globalization. So globalization has several benefits, and these are free flow of capital, an increase in total capital employment, free flow of technology transfer happened very easily, increase in industrialization that happened, spread of production facilities throughout the globe. So globally things were getting mixed up, balanced development of world economy. So on the world front, it was getting more dispersed. Increase in production consumption. It was gaining momentum on the capitalistic side. Commodities at lower prices with high quality. Increase in jobs and income. Higher standards of living. Balanced human development. These were some of the pluses that were observed with globalization, but definitely also comes with the minuses as well, and those were loss of domestic industry. So a lot of small SSIs which were on the verge lost their momentum. Transfer of natural resources, since it was getting globally dispersed, the natural resources which were earlier restricted to only national shores were now uplifted to other countries as well, lead to commercial and political colonialism. So earlier they say colonialism used to happen, people used to go and colonize. For example, Britishers conquered the whole world through colonialism. So economic colonialism is when people used to rule the other country through capital forces, through economic forces. Widening gap between the rich and the poor, the haves and have-nots. Dominance of foreign institutions. So a lot of time, all these FDIs or foreign direct investors were gaining predominance in terms of their effect. And one of the last thing that we want to address in this subject of SSI and the globalization, because that's what the way forward also is about GATT and WHO, and how GATT or General Agreement on Trade and Tariff and the World Trade Organization which are ruling the roost when it comes to running the entire business function or economic function world over, for an entrepreneur, how does it impact and how he is part of the entire scenario. So GATT, as the full form suggests, is General Agreement on Trade and Tariff. If you look into the history, from the depression of 1930s, where international trade was badly affected, various countries imposed import restrictions to safeguard their economy. As a result, in sharp decline in the world trade, 1945, US put forth many proposals to extend international trade and employment. In October 1947, 23 countries signed an agreement related to trade and tariff. So 1947 is when GATT, now GATT itself is a body of communities of the globe. Started off with 23 countries, now it has close to 125 odd countries, and India definitely now is part of GATT. GATT 1947, general agreement on this was an agreement signed by a group of 123 nations, agreeing in principle to promote trade among members. In industries, that the political dispute and problems could be resolved by coming together in discussion with members who have signed the agreement. So if you have a body that facilitates it, it becomes easier to negotiate in conflict, to have a difference of opinion as well. From an entrepreneur's perspective, what this GATT gave is, it gave in the entire horizon of the world in terms of reach out to the product. Now they are not, even for a small SSI, they are not looking only on Indian shores. They can look well beyond in other continents as well. Let's take an example of antiviral drugs. Now antiviral drugs, which were manufactured by small scale industries, either to big organizations or to small organizations. And India is a developing country, but there are many countries who are still underdeveloped. And there are so many countries in Africa, especially the Northeast Africa and even the Northwest as well, like Nigeria, parts of Zimbabwe, Mozambique, so many of them, Somalia. So a lot of these companies, what they did is they start exporting antiviral drugs to North Africa, which was badly hit by HIV due to lack of education, hygiene awareness. Now, a lot of Indian companies were part of this evolution, which post pre-liberalization they didn't had a vision about it. So post-liberalization, that gave an edge in terms of taking out the product and reaching out. So for many entrepreneurs, this is given an opportunity to look as a world, as a nation, as a playground to play with. Three basic principles when it comes to GATT. Once a tariff concession is agreed to, it cannot be raised again. Advantages given to one country must be given to all other countries. Import goods treated the same as domestic goods in terms of regulation and taxes. The main objectives when it comes to GATT are, by reducing tariff barriers in international trade, the GATT aims at expansion of international trade, increase of world production by ensuring full employment to participating nations. So it also they want to have the local participation also in terms of employment, development and full utilization of world resources. So it's not just being country specific, but we are looking at how resources could be mobilized globally as well. Raising standards of living of the world community as a whole. So from a small scale industries perspective, they are giving the vision about competing at a world stage. So World Trade Organization deals with the global rules of the trade between nations. Its main function is to ensure that the trade flows as smoothly, predictably and free, and if at all, if there is a difference of opinion or conflict, could be negotiated as well. WTO is an organization for bilateral trade, a forum for government to negotiate trade agreements, and a place for them to settle any dispute, if any. Objectives. Now we're looking to quickly take a nutshell of the objectives, and the objectives were to create a knowledge base. Now once for WTO, the primary objective was to create a knowledge base, a knowledge pool, wherein matter concerned to various national and international trade laws and protocols could be laid across. Increase awareness among domestic industry, business, agriculture, service and other sectors which could impact treaties of other members. So all look, for example, basmati rice, which was so much a patented thing when it comes to Indian industry, got an opportunity to go global as well. To implement the new world trade system as visualized in the agreement, to promote world trade members in a manner that benefits every country, to expand and utilize world resources at the best, to increase the level of production and productivity with a view to ensuring levels of employment in the world. So the objective of WTO is also to look at how the economies of all the countries could be brought up on a single platform where the difference in growth could be cut off, and by and large many countries are growing at a similar rates. Supporting agents when it comes to government for SSI are All India institutions, National Small Industries Corporation, NSIC, 1995, view to promoting the growth of SSI in the country, Khadi Village Industry Commission. Now we mentioned that cottage industry was a very important industry, hence the commission of KVIC 1957, where KVIC is supposed to do planning, promotion, organization and implementation of this program for development of the khadi and other village industries as well. Training institutes. So government institutes also are what kind of training institutes they want to groom in terms of understanding and sharpening the know-how of an entrepreneur, give them expertise, knowledge, give them loans as well. National Institute for Small Industry Extension training. Hyderabad undertakes operations like training, consultancy, research. National Institute for Entrepreneurship Development and Small Business Development, New Delhi, conducts national and international level trainings program in different fields. So there are various training organizations that the government has set up in giving additional know-how for an entrepreneur, setting vision, and also how to operational grounds as well. Support groups established by government for SSI. The Indian Institute of Entrepreneurship Guwahati, based in Assam, was established as a channel for entrepreneurship development with a focus on SSI. There are state level institutions also. State Small Industrial Development Corporations, State Directorate of Research, SDIs, or District Industrial Centers. So if you see right from IIE, SSI, SSIDC, SDIs, DIC, there are small, right from local bodies, district level bodies, state level bodies and national bodies, either for training, either for development, providing technical know-how as well. Lot of industrial setups were being set up by the government for development of SSI. Fundraising. Now this is only for the training perspective. There are other institutions that were raised by the government for fund-based institutions. Now for raising funds, and those were small industrial development. The SIDB were established with 5 regional offices. The commercial banks, where credit requirement of SSIs is of 2 types, the short-term loans and the working capital. There are SFCs or state financial corporations as well. So first SFC was set up in Punjab, and today there are 18 SFCs across the country. The Khadi and Village Industries Commission, the KVIC, is a statutory body created by the Act of the Parliament 56 concerning the planning, organizing, implementation, execution in the development of khadi, because cottage industry was important. So there was a commission for the KVIC, built up a reserve for raw materials, implement to supply to rural industries, create common service facility to market the product of KVC, to organize training artisans. Now, if it is cottage industry, then artisans need to be trained, groomed as well, to provide necessary technical information, guidance to supply of designs and prototypes to khadi and village industry. So all of these came under the purview of KVIC. The National Productivity Council. Now this is an autonomous council where, functioning under the overall supervision of the Ministry, Government of India, based in Delhi, where it has got a regional directorate of almost all states, wherein its primary objective is to act as a catalyst in enhancing the productivity of all the sectors of the economy, including industry and agriculture. So all the small scale industries which are associated with industries and agriculture came under the purview of National Productivity Council of India. The main activity of National Productivity Council, or NPC, is to provide consultancy training to various areas related to industrial engineering, plant engineering, energy management, HRD, informal sectors. 200 professionals are working under NPC in order to provide expertise to NPC to small scale industries. SIDBI has entered into a tie-or agreement where collaborative promotional joint ventures could be brought about, and they have formed different clusters of SSIs where NPC and SIDBI get an association so that they can help SSIs and emerging SSIs, so that they can give a good platform for budding entrepreneurs. The Indian Institute of Entrepreneurs, where IIE was established in 1993 as an autonomous national institute in Guwahati, and their main role was to organize and conduct training programs of functionaries, to identify, design and conduct training programs for existing entrepreneurs. So primarily role of IIE was setting up a vision, training of entrepreneurs, and setting up the vision as well. So to act as a catalyst for the development of self-employment, entrepreneurship, enterprise and business, all these setups were built up. Now all these setups were also very detrimental. Now understand, from an entrepreneur's perspective, if you have a fallback mechanism, if you have something that you can fall back on as an organization, government aid and support. Now understand, we are also speaking this in the backdrop of post-liberalization era, when it comes to privatization, globalization as well. So there are foreign players also as competitors for SSI. So any support, any training requirement, any loan requirement, any technical expertise requirement, if they have something as a fallback mechanism from a government, a regulated body, it becomes a very huge surplus. Also, IIE's role was to organize workshops, seminars, etc. for promotion of entrepreneurship. So a lot of time, people who are apprehensive when it comes to building up of an entrepreneurship, IIE gives a such platform so that entrepreneurship could be taken up, carried it forward big time as well. So these were the various institutions that were built. So that brings us to the end of the module. Just to quickly take through what we have discussed so far. We have seen the role of SSI, and we have mentioned that SSI is primarily mentioned as a small scale industry or SMEs or MSME, where emergence of SSI has seen a major growth, right from government has taken a lot of initiative to support it, We have also seen how to make a business proposal plan where they're looking to proposal, the finance, capital, land, clearances from local bodies as well. And we also look into the international arena as well that's happening as well. So that's it from my side. This is Professor Dinesh Gusai signing off from this side. If you have any doubts, please drop a mail at ISBM. We will be more than happy to respond to you. Till then, keep learning, keep evolving.